Mr. Garber, are there any items taken, any action taken in closed session that needs to be reported out?
No, ma'am.
Okay. May I have approval of the agenda or removed items from the agenda or the order of the agenda?
President Mendoza, on the consent agenda, is that what we're discussing at this time?
Yes, we can.
There's three items on the consent agenda. Actually, two items. Items A and B under legal, involving
Number 2?
taxes issues, legal.
You want to pull those for
I'd like
discussion?
to pull items A and B under section 2.
Okay. Any other items to be pulled for this? Well, okay, other than that. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the agenda with else?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay. Moving on to public comments. Now is the time to speak before the board. As you come to the podium, please state your name for the record and please limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Gloria, would you please start the timing?
Excuse me. I want to time myself. My name's Oscar Gonzalez, and I live in Calexico at 322 East. You know, what I just witnessed, it's really ugly, and it's a tragedy. Shakespeare said one time that life is a tragedy for those that think and comedy for those who feel, and I feel. You know, Mr. Desert, you have a problem. I had the same problem when he was running for the primaries. He's a bully. He thinks he's a bully. He's an adult. He needs anger management. If I were you, I'd file a complaint. And I did call the cops, but he begged me to lay off. You have a problem, sir. You're an adult. You know, independent of what happened or who said, it's politics. You don't have to take it personal. When I was young,
Mr. Gonzalez, please do not. The time to come before the podium to speak to the board is regarding IID issues.
No, I know, but that is an IID issue.
I do not appreciate your personal attacks.
It doesn't
matter. Whether it's any director.
I don't care.
Well,
I disagree with you.
Well,
and I'm siding with you, Mr. Menville. My name's Oscar Gonzalez, and I'm a member of the committee known as Committee to Recall Anthony Sanchez for Ethical Government. We're approximately 40 members, comprised of people from all pockets of the community in Imperial County, largely Calexico. We're organized and we have a plan, and I want to say publicly, Mike Morgan is not funding it, or the Imperial Group. Calexico people, we have the ability to conceptualize and be able. This is my third recall. When I was a young lad at 22, we recalled Wayne Vandegraff. Second recall was Turi Armenta. Louis Legaspi was with me then, and he was a supervisor. And we're proud, and we have about 40 people in Calexico. In 1 week, in 14 days, we've gathered 800 signatures. And we have a lot of support from individual union members of IID, farmers and also merchants. We believe we don't have any representation in Division 5. We know, and we've known it for quite a while, that Anthony doesn't live in Division 1. When I did the proof of service, I asked the election department his address. When he ran, he had Baker Street. When he returned the certified mail, it said P.O. Box. And we know he doesn't live. And I wish he could refute me right now, and he could say it publicly. We don't have representation. In conclusion, you know, how much more time?
You have 1 minute.
In conclusion, Mr. Anthony, enjoy what you have left, because we're going to have a new IID board member. We've got 5 months, and we're shooting for 10,000. We're shooting for 2,000 signatures every month. And you're not going to be here. I told you one time that I was going to run against you. but I never dreamed that I would have the opportunity to recall you, because I didn't realize that there was that many people out there. And you answered. It was a bunch of rhetoric and lies, the 5 points that you put in the Chronicle, and I saw it. And we have to circulate that petition. We put our side, and you put your side, and you put one sentence. Good luck, best wishes, and happy trails, pal. Okay, watch it.
State your name for the record, please. And you also have 5 minutes.
Okay, President Mendoza, thank you, and board. My name is Mark Grant. I'm the mayor for the city of Imperial, and this is still your centennial year, and I want to say congratulations and thank you for holding your event in our city. I was able to be there and speak, so thank you very much for that. But I'm also embarrassed, and I apologize. At the event, we were not able to give you your proclamation at that time, so I would like to take this opportunity to present to your board the proclamation from the city of Imperial. I won't read it because it'll take time and you're already running late, but I wanted to present this to the board and to the staff of the IID.
Hand it to Mr. Kelly, please. Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the board before we turn it over to the board members? Director Sanchez?
For the record, I do live in Heber. If Mr. Gonzalez knows that P.O. boxes are for the homes in Old Heber and not in New Heber, that's why there's P.O. boxes, because that's where we get our mail in Old Heber. As well as the points, then I would go ahead and answer one of them right now. Where if I do not live in Heber, and if I'm not doing my fiduciary responsibility like you claim, then again, your claims on your 5 points have no merit, because or else it is the board's fiduciary responsibility to make that claim against me and ask for me to step down, but they haven't because they know that I live in Heber. So again, if I'm not doing my fiduciary responsibility on your 5 claims, this is a full board right here saying that I do live and I am doing my fiduciary response as far as where I live in the right division.
Excuse me, Mr. Gonzalez? No.
So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, if you're going to be disruptive, I'm going to ask you to leave. No talking from the audience like that. Director Sanchez has the floor. When you had the floor, nobody interrupted you. Director Desert?
No comments.
Director Manville?
Yeah, thank you, President Mendoza. Yesterday, and General Manager Kevin Kelly was informed of this. I told him I was setting up this meeting with IID staff. IID staff and I met yesterday, and IID staff was Bruce Wilcox, Dave Bradshaw, Steve Carlton, and Jessica Lachino. And we met with the University of California, San Diego Scripps Institute of Oceanography staff. It was Dominic Mandola, Greg Mitchell, and Spencer Eldred. We met at IID's J15. And the purpose of the meeting lasted about 2.5 hours. We discussed using some algae ponds on the Salton Sea Playa to help reduce the dust mitigation problems. And the UCSD Scripps is applying for Prop 84 money, and they wanted to talk to the IID about being part of the research that they would be doing and trying to get grant money through Prop 84 and working on trying to set up a 10 or 20 or 30 acre algae pond down on the playa. So Mr. Wilcox is a very good meeting. I know Mr. Wilcox will be talking to General Manager Kelly about this, but I told them yesterday that I would bring this up at board member comments today, at least to try to get the ball rolling, because the Prop 84 grant application has to be in by September the 2nd. So, and I know Mr. Wilcox was going to talk to, he's out of town today, he's going to talk to.
Mr. Wilcox is sitting back there.
Is he here? Oh, there he is. Bruce, you told me you weren't going to be here. Okay. Well, cool. Well, anyway, I'm responding and reporting like I told you I would do, and then you hook up with Mr. Kelly and get his okay, and then there will be some legal. Mr. Wilcox talked that he's going to have to talk to Mr. Garber on legal with IID being involved in something like that. So those are issues that have to get worked out with the GM and legal and Mr. Wilcox. So I'll leave it at that then. You take it from there, okay? Thank you. That's my report. Thank you.
Director Hanks?
No comment.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes, President Mendoza, members of the board, just in response, that's welcome news about University of California, San Diego. We do need, the board has discussed the need for some sort of strategic alliance with a major research facility or university. So I will take that up with Mr. Wilcox, and thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
Mr. Garber?
No comments, ma'am.
We'll now go back to the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
And we'll discuss number 2, A and B, at the end of the meeting. We move on now to item number 8, page 21 in your agenda, internal access review of Microsoft Exchange Server. Who's going to be the presenter? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam President and Board of Directors. My name is Ernest Dixon. I'm a Managing Director with Navigant Consulting. And briefly to outline for you the presentation we have today regarding certain findings in the course of work we've been performing and retained by the General Manager and the company. And I would also like to express my compliments to the staff for their cooperation and assistance as we work through this process. Just our table of contents is to make sure introduction, our scope of work, the process and steps we basically followed in performing our work, and then the recommendation and next steps for the company, which I think we can address any questions after that matter. Basically, an introduction is what is Navigant, and I just basically listed out some of the things that we have done and our overall credentials and the things that we have done, and I can basically speak to those to make sure of that. For this scope of engagement, we've basically been looked at the IT infrastructure, and we were retained by Imperial Irrigation District to perform an internal access review of what we call your Microsoft Exchange server. So this is what hosts your email, so that when you go into your email system and you open it up and you look at your emails, we're looking at the controls surrounding that structure. So for your corporate-wide email related to the use of 2 specific terms, we call these email access logs, and how that data is preserved. Now, this process was also done in connection with another piece of work that we did, was what we refer to as we went in and took a look at to make sure that a piece of software called SpectraSoft, which is an internet monitoring software, that IID had apparently retained licenses for this historically, and whether that has been turned on or utilized by IID. And we saw no indication that the software had been utilized. It had been installed on one computer, but it had not been activated. So as a result of looking at this, then we also looked at the second part of this is the access into the Microsoft Exchange server. The basic process in this scope of work is we spoke with IT personnel, specifically to get an understanding of your environment, structure, and IT. And, for example, looking at understanding what we call user permissions. Now, it's a technical term, but you have a login ID, and it could be your first name, your initial of your first name and last name, and then at IID. So that is your user, and then the permission says, what do I have access to look at? And then what user groups then do you have access into? Also logging and auditing policies. So when you actually click on your Exchange server icon on your computer and it opens up, there's a log that says you accessed your email on a certain date at a certain time. And then how those logs are retained and how you back up those logs, basically to make sure they don't get overwritten by mistake, so you have an historical evidence of what's transpired. Now, after this discussion, what we observed in connection with how processes and logs are set up is basically the login, what we call an Active Directory, is not enabled on your Microsoft Exchange server. So basically, the listing of who is authorized to access specific email accounts doesn't exist. Also, an event level logging, where we call for the Exchange server, is not enabled. So when a person accesses a specific email account, there is no record that it was accessed. There is also no backup of the logs on your system to be able to go back and look at historically who has accessed the Active Directory logs or the email systems or user accounts. And there is not an auditing process in place to go in to be able to do this because these logs aren't maintained. And so also, if you did have the logs maintained, you would have to have somebody to actually go back in and take a look at it to make that effective. Now, basically, our recommendations and next steps, as we've communicated to the company, is turn on and enable the logging of your changes for your Active Directory. Enable specific logging on your Exchange server so that every time somebody opens up their email accounts, a record is made of that. And obtain a specific level of detail so you can have this comprehensive log. Have these procedures set up so that you have adequate historical documentation of the logs so they can be looked at historically. And we recommended using some third-party tools or programs to be able to go in to try to see what people have, what permissions into what email accounts, and how those permissions are designated and kept up to date. And then finally, to establish a protocol to routinely audit these admissions, permissions, and these logs on a regular and routine basis so that this control is effective. So in summary, what we want to say is to establish your security processes and protocols to properly log and audit your email accounts on your Exchange server, establish a defined security process and protocols, and adhering to their implementation and performing these subsequent auditing procedures.
Mr. Kelly, in your opinion, we'll be able to follow the recommendations in the summary?
Yes, clearly we'll do those things recommended by Navigant. I do want to introduce to the board Mr. Vishal Osa. Could you stand, please? Vishal is actually the person who's been doing the work with us at IID, and so the assessment, the first phase is completed, and the work continues.
So the gentleman will be in charge of the second phase of the summary?
He'll be involved in the ongoing work, yes.
We will be retaining another technical entity to assist us in actually fulfilling these requirements, and I know that IT's already been working on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
I would like to add to that, Madam President, that as part of our process in doing this work, when we make the summaries and recommendations, we typically don't look to follow on to implement those, because then that gives us a potential conflict of interest.
Understand.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? Not? Then we will move on to item number 9, page 30 on your agenda, Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. Mrs. Kutza.
Good evening, President Mendoza, members of the board. As your board packet indicates, you'll find an information item pertaining to the continued funding of the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. IID has been a participating investor in IVEDC since 2008, when the board voted to enter into a 3-year service agreement in the amount of $100,000 per year or $300,000 for the contract period. The board also took action to sponsor IVEDC's Renewable Energy Summit in the amount of $25,000 each year. And in consideration of the agreement that expired in December of 2010, the district has been approached for continued funding, and this is the reason that the item is before you this evening. For the Energy Department to continue the funding at the same level equates to approximately $125,000 per year, and staff would like to seek guidance from the board as to what funding level you feel is appropriate moving forward. Before we engage in that discussion, please be advised that Mr. Tim Kelly, President and CEO of IVEDC, is here this evening, and he'd like to be given the opportunity to say a few words.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Jennifer. Tim Kelly, President and CEO of the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. This is President and board members. Just wanted to give you a quick presentation. I do have a couple members of my board of directors and a couple to talk about a couple projects we're working on, and also one potential client that we have here in the Imperial County that would like to make a quick presentation. First of all, IVDC is a private corporation. We have 125 investors. Our main role is external marketing of the region. We do this through direct marketing, trade shows, conferences, and advertising. And we have many strategic partners, such as the Team California, which I'm the state president, CalEd, California Association of Local Economic Development, of which I'm a board member, World Trade Center San Diego, of which I'm a board member, Clean Tech San Diego, of which I'm a board member. As a matter of fact, your presentation today about the algae is one of the programs that we're working on in San Diego. The USDA, we're involved in 2 grants with Coachella Valley Economic Partnership. We just received the RBEG and the RBOG, totaling about $85,000, and that'll support businesses both here in the Imperial County and in Coachella Valley, and also the ATIP program. In addition, I think that one of our greatest partners is the Imperial Irrigation District. As you know, it's our largest industry here in the Imperial County for our potential that we have, and we really do thank the IID for their support of our organization, and also thank you for the cooperation of the IID staff in working with the many projects that have been coming here. First of all, I'd like to introduce Steve Birdsall, who is our agriculture consultant with IVDC. And
That's why you're here. Tell me you were slumming.
And really what I want to do is just have them talk about a couple projects they're working on and the progress of those.
Very briefly.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim. Madam President, IID Board, thank you very much for this opportunity just to let you know that, Tim and I have been working together on several agricultural projects as of late. One of those came to fruition earlier in the year where we have an organization who's trying to develop sorghum, not sweet sorghum for methanol, but actually sorghum for biomass, which are going to burn intend to burn in burners or boilers to produce power. They came down here, Tim put together the project, I helped out. We've got a 30-acre trial going on down at El Toro Feedlot that's doing varieties trials down there. In fact, they just harvested one of their fields today. If you have an opportunity, I had to go by. It's about 12 feet tall. It's real dense. The plan is to harvest it, dry it, bale it, and then take it and burn it in one of the power plants. They also, at the same time, have some small plot variety trials going on with Ron Rubin up at the Brawley Research Station, which are looking real good, too. So our hope and desire is that, depending upon how these trials come out, to see several thousand acres of this stuff possibly planted in the next season.
Thank you.
If I can add to the hit parade, thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Tom DuBose. I'm from Development Design and Engineering. I'm the current vice chair of IVEDC, and I just wanted to say that thanks to you and all of the other investors, we've really gained a lot of momentum over the last 3 years. The kind of momentum that, in fact, is starting to really show from my shop's point of view is just very recently we've been able to bring back some of those that we've had to lay off with some of the new activity. So we're enjoying work that is a direct result of your involvement and IVEDC's involvement in the renewable energy conferences each year that continue to grow and grow. And as you also know, as past president of the builders group of both Coachella, Palm Springs, and Imperial counties, building has been down, and we're seeing new life in Imperial County, more so up in Coachella Valley at the moment in regards to building. And I think it's all to the efforts of IVEDC and the new industry that's coming in. And I would request that you consider to stay where you're at because, again, momentum is key, and we've really been able to gain that over the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DuBose.
Mike Paredes, Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation, President Mendoza, members of the board. Just very quick to give you some data on that momentum that Tom was talking about, and give you an example of one of the projects that I've been working on personally for many months now. And one of the things that when Tim hired me about a year and a half ago was to bring quality jobs into the area, which we've been working on several projects, and one of which is a private company. I want to just give you an overview of, I can't name it publicly as of yet, but it's a company with 75 years experience in looking at about 300 construction jobs, temporary, but also 300 full-time jobs with an average salary of about $41,500, I believe it is. Their annual budget is about $10 to $12 million with, it'll be hopefully situated in about 31 acres. And again, it's one of those projects that it's on top of my project list, and it's just pending one decision at the federal level in terms of budgets, which is a big headache right now, but it is pending on just one element. So that's just one example of many, and I'll make it really quick of the types of projects that we are working on here at IVEDC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President and board members, my name is Andrew Young. I represent Megawatt Solar, the prospective client that Tim Kelly mentioned. I am here to share our intent with the board. We're interested in the PPA that Green Hunter currently holds for the Mesquite Lake Manure Power Plant, but they have divested from Imperial County, and thanks to Mr. Kelly, we're in discussions with Green Hunter, as well as the landowner of 232 acres adjacent to that power plant. We intend to submit proposal to the IID to make good use of that PPA that may become expired in the near future, and use 200 acres of the adjacent land for solar power generation while preserving the biomass feature of that power plant, and possibly putting a geothermal facility on the remaining 32 acres, as well as manufacturing and assembly facility that would generate permanent jobs for Imperial County.
You want to do all that in that particular site?
That particular site is suited for that. It's zoned for that purpose. It's for power generation, for light and medium manufacturing. And that's what we would like to do, to take an existing PPA that's about to expire, repurpose with the intent to preserve the biomass feature of the existing power plant, but it needs to be reworked, it needs to be retrofitted. But we will start with the solar and go back to the biomass. Oh, by the way, I also have a federally administered EBA regional center for which Homeland Security's USCIS approved the following investment categories. They are biomass, fossil fuel, geothermal, solar, wind, and advanced technologies for the environment and water. So this Imperial County is part of the regional center, and I'm actively working with foreign private investors to come in to provide the strategic funding necessary to get all this done. The PPA is a very important component, and making sure that we satisfy all the regulatory requirements is essential. So I look forward to working with the board.
So do you have the funding secured for all these projects?
As we speak, we're actively in final negotiations, and this could be done in 2011.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is just a glimpse of some of the projects we're working on, which is probably around 50 for our office. We have a staff of 5 currently, and are taking on some additional projects for business services in which we'll be able to link companies that are coming in the Imperial Valley with existing companies. And we figured that that was a gap, and we were very successful in bringing the companies here. Now we want to make sure that companies locally can benefit from that. Our continued support from IID will allow us to be able to market at the level that we are, and additionally bring on staff that will be able to support us in the business services. I also wanted to, in the packet I presented you, is a list of businesses that have signed letters of intent for the Mesquite Lake project, and we're still in communication with most of them. who are waiting on infrastructure. This project that Mr. Young had mentioned will help to bring in some of the infrastructure for that portion of the Mesquite Lake, which will allow these companies to move in. So thank you very much. I just wanted to mention also that Carl Stills has been with us in many trade shows along with IID staff, and many of those are through Team California and also with IVDC. We've had him present on many occasions about the opportunities here in the Imperial County and the status of the IID transmission. And I really appreciate the efforts of the IID staff in supporting our marketing efforts, and I think that we've made a lot of headway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, the County of Imperial, what is their annual contribution to your budget?
Well, you know, I was hoping that one of the discussions we could have today is the total contribution to economic development in the county. The IID's contribution totally to economic development in the county is about close to $200,000. And to IVDC is currently at $50,000.
So the county provides your $50,000. Do they do other events that they help you as well, or just the $50,000 straight?
They provide funding for also other events that we participate in.
So what is the total amount?
Just to IVDC?
Mm-hmm.
Probably around $70,000.
About $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jennifer, can I ask you a question, please, on this matter? I know on the budget that you're working on, I know that Mr. Kelly, they'd cut him back on the budget, but I know Director Hanks and I both spoke to you about taking some of the money that wasn't being spent for the 2 enterprise zones to get him back up to the $100,000 level that he was requesting. And then I know you've got in here a total request of 125. So is that the other extra 25? Is that for the Energy Summit?
No, and Sandra Ainsworth, the controller for the Energy Department, is here and can speak to this. But when the enterprise zones, when the JPAs reduced their funding levels or reduced their membership fees, the budget was reduced at that time. And so there's technically only $45,000, I believe. Is it 45,000 for each of the enterprise zones?
Sandra, please come to the podium, and so we can all hear you.
Sandra Ainsworth, Controller, Energy Department. So for 2012, which is still in formulation, we currently have, I believe it's 46,000 and 45,000 respectively for the 2 enterprise zones. According to the latest resolution that was passed, I think about a month ago or so. So that's what's currently in the budget. And we actually hadn't budgeted enough for the enterprise zones in the 2011 budget. So we're working on adjusting that to whatever, according to what the the board directs us to do.
Okay, well, do you have I know they have a funding request of 125. My question was that the request, is that also for the Energy Summit, the extra 25 that we donate every year? Is that what this request is?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and then you do have the money in the budget to make up for the 100,000. Is that correct? If you use the enterprise zone money.
For 2011?
12. I'm talking about 12.
For 2012, well, that budget's in formulation, so, we can...
Well, we're working on that right now.
We're working on that now. So currently, we had included $50,000 for the annual contribution and $25,000 for the Energy Summit. But as I said, according to board direction, we can change that.
Well, I know Director Hanks wants to talk on this matter. I just want to say, I know that I told Mr. Kelly when I spoke to him that he'd had a 3-year funding and it ran out. I'm in favor of funding him for another 100,000 and the Energy Summit when that comes up. I know I've attended the Energy Summits. It's a very good networking. I know a lot of the solar geothermal people get out there and talk. Some of them have ended up with PPAs, and I think that's been a very good summit. I know the district funds that to the tune of $25,000 a year, and the county doesn't put up that much money, but I think it's been very valuable to the IID in dealing with solar and geothermal and people like that, so we can get transmission built to get the energy out of here.
Director
Hanks? I would
Hanks?
be supportive of this.
Yeah, I've got a question for Mr. Kelly, Tim. Of the utility, the generators that are in our queue, how many of those have you provided service to?
All of them.
Okay. I think it's very important that we remain the utility of choice in Imperial County. And I also thank not only Imperial County, but the region and the state. And I'll make a motion to continue funding at the same level.
Which is what number?
I'll second that.
100,000 plus.
This item is just for information. Staff is seeking direction, and we'll come back to you next week for action.
For clarification, Director Hanks, you want 100,000 for the budget and then 25,000 for the Energy Summit?
Yes.
So a total of 125?
Yes.
Bring that back for the next meeting?
Yes.
And just to further refine that, in regards to the $100,000, is that a general fund contribution, or can staff negotiate to for specific sponsorships of other IVEDC events and ad space in magazines and things of that nature, or do you just want a $100,000 blanket contribution?
I prefer it to be at the same level, the same way.
Okay. We will. Next group. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so you bring it back?
Yes. Next week.
Okay. And Mr. Cali, I would hope that we're going to continue, at least for next year, to fund you at the same level. We get as much publicity as the county does. And probably you can speak nicer about us, you and Andy Horn, at these functions.
I can't speak for
I've been there.
I can't speak for Andy Horn, but I will speak kinder of you.
Please do. Well, not of me, of the board, of the IID in general. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on to page 31, item number 10. Energy Department General Matters, Dr. Koch.
Yes, Madam President. Two minor things. Last week I brought up the San Juan, where the EPA's decision on San Juan was to go back to the selective catalytic recovery systems that would add about $3 million per year in cost to the district. This Thursday, all the managers that are, or all the utilities that are participants in San Juan from Southern California are meeting at SCAPA to attempt to come up with a unified position on what we're going to propose back to EPA and to the state of New Mexico and the New Mexico EPA so that we can move forward and attempt to come to some kind of consolidated or combined direction to go forward in the negotiations with the federal government. The second thing is, in the next week or so, we will have a contract for a consultant to help us begin planning for a biogas facility here in the valley. Several of the board members who I've talked to have indicated at least some desire to participate in these as we go forward. So we're going to extend that invitation to any of the members that would like to participate in this initial meeting, which we're hoping would be not next week, but the following week.
What would be the cost for this consultant?
It's about $45,000. I have learned more about cow manure in the last few weeks than I've had any desire to learn, which includes such things as the heat value per pound of cow manure, how various types of cow manure have different types of heating and moisture content, and different sorts of regulatory requirements. I mean, I have become a real expert on cow manure. But
you're not an expert till you get a hold of that shovel.
I hope never to become that great an expert, sir. But the point of this is to identify the various ways in which we can develop a biogas facility here in the valley. Do we want above ground, below ground? Where should it be located? What type of contracts do we need with the feedstock operators? Where's the best place for it to be located so that we can remove the hydrogen sulfide and other impurities that come out of the cow manure, clean it, dry it, and inject it into the Southern California gas pipeline so that we can burn it in El Centro 3.
How many other utilities have a successful biogas program?
Well, LA is by far and away the largest. Now, they use the Hyperion waste plant, which unfortunately blew up last week. But
Is this like your wind tower you had up in Arizona? One of your dream pet projects?
As I've said, it's going to be built, so we are buying biogas. Biogas is by far and away the least expensive way for the district to meet.
Unless it blows up?
Unless it blows up. But there are, one of the things that we want to determine is whether or not the district should build and own the facility itself, or whether or not we should find a developer who is willing to take all the risks and then pay a premium for the facility.
When is this meeting going to be?
We're hoping, and depends on whichever board members would like to participate. That's what we're trying to find out, who wants to be, so that we can coordinate schedules. But our hope is not next week, but the following week.
Okay. Are you going to invite some of the feedlot owners?
At this first meeting, I would prefer not to. And you've indicated that you know who they are and can get in touch with them. At this first meeting, I just would like to identify the scope and make sure that everybody is comfortable with the direction that we're moving as we set out the scope of work for the consultants who have built a number of these.
Is this the one also where Southern Cal Gas is involved?
Southern Cal Sempra is interested in building a biogas facility down here. We are trying to get in touch with them and see if they would like to be a participant, an owner, sell to us, or what role they would like to play in it. We would be injecting the gas into SoCal Gas's pipeline, SoCal being a subsidiary of Sempra. So yes, but Sempra is involved through IVEDC in building this type of facility down here.
And I know Dr. Dominic Medola that we met with yesterday, he also talked about the biogas deal. So I think he was in one of the original meetings they had with a bunch of the cattlemen down here that Tim Kelly had put together with Southern Cal Gas also. So
yes, sir.
You may want to talk to him too.
Yes, sir.
Is the consultant a technical consultant in nature for the biogas facility, or more of a commodities or trading consultant?
It's a technical consultant. It's a company called Seahold. They have actually built a number of these projects, and the principal goes around the country teaching classes at these 2 or 3 day seminars that are held by Oxford and all the other companies. Goes around showing how to do it. We don't need anybody who can do it from a financial point of view. We need a technical consultant who can come out and tell us, if you want to build it, here's the best way for your particular area. Here's the type of feedstock that you have. They're going to check the heat content of the feedstock at the various feedlots to make sure. And again, as I said, I've learned more about this than I really wanted to.
Dr. Koch, how many of these biogas facilities have been built in the Central Valley, where they have all those dairies that relocated to the Central Valley from Chino?
2 have been built up there.
Are they still operating today?
One is operating, one is not. A new one was just built down in Texas by the same company that we're intending to buy our biogas from, Element. It's called Huckleberry. It's an above-ground facility with 6 1 million gallon tanks for collection of this. Most of the facilities use digester gas from water treatment facilities. So it is very, very common, and there are hundreds.
Why did one company go? You said there were 2 built in the Central Valley. Why is one operating, one is not?
My understanding is, I'll call it bad financial management. If you remember the movie The Producers,
Yes.
That's my understanding of what happened there. When you try to sell 300 or 400% of a product, it tends to spread the returns to each of the people very, very small. That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
Is the terminology a digester? Is that what we're talking about, a manure digester to produce the gas?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's available to the IID, but there's been a couple of these facilities proposed in the last 10 years. And those files and those books are on record at the planning department and also other agencies at the county. So you might want to check with their libraries to see who the players were and what their plans were and what came apart and didn't come to fruition.
We will do that, sir.
Any other comments? Are you done with your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a
go
question
on.
for him. Can you give us just a brief update of where we're at on the El Maria substation? I received a call from, I believe it's Arita Feedlot, and they're working on a solar project.
I'm going to turn that over. I know the work order isn't the work order today? It's next week. Next week then.
Maria Saleta, to answer your question, Director Hanks, Board, the MWA is almost prepared. It's just a matter of making through the signatures. We hope to have that in front of the board in the next couple of weeks for their review and approval. The tentative schedule from the last meeting we had shows us starting construction basically the day after you approve, with most of the distribution work, pole replacement, line extensions, upgrades of certain lines, and then the substation beginning in the latter part of the year, because that material is a little longer lead. So it's moving along, sir. It's just...
Could I get you to call Paul Cameron with
Sure.
the Arita Feedlot?
Sure, and we'll let him know.
Yeah, he's got a little time frame because he's working on permitting and so forth for some solar there at the feedlot.
Okay, well, go ahead and keep in touch with him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Escalera. Okay, then moving on to item number 11, page 32 on your agenda, energy cost adjustment online worksheet. Dr. Cope, you're still the presenter?
Madam President, David Koch, Assistant Manager, General Manager, Energy. When we passed the ECA adjustments, we agreed to put the entire worksheet on the IID website so that people could see exactly how we calculated it on a month-to-month basis. If Mr. Sandoval would move all the way to column A. Okay, here we have the descriptions of the various resources. So we have our falling water charge, our WAPA, the Bureau of Reclamation, this is our Parker Davis, then our San Juan capacity, our Palo Verde capacity, our biomass, which was budgeted. Can you shrink that a little bit? Okay, just move to the left and then go all the way to the top. The top. Okay, it's harder to see now, but it's all here. Okay, so you can see the biomass facility, Green Hunter, we had hoped to have online. We had budgeted almost $600,000 for it. Obviously, there's zero. So over here in our description, we show all of the various resources that we have. Move down a little bit. Then how much of that is in capacity, how much of it is energy, and then the cost of each of the various resources that we spend on a monthly basis. Keep going down. Okay, go down a little bit more. Okay, So for July, which is the last month that we have records for, you can see that we budgeted about $31 million in power supply costs for the month. Our actual costs were about $26 million. Step down. What'd you do? Down. I can see it better from here. I don't know if the rest of you can. So we have our base rate fuel and power cost summary and our subtotal of power purchase costs. So we see that our total costs were $26 million. $7 million of it was base rate fuel and purchase power costs. How much of it is broken down by capacity, falling water, and then our option premiums. Then our ECA broken down again, so we're looking at essentially $19.2 million. Then how much we received from wholesale gas and energy sales, and then the net cost that would be recoverable through the ECA before our 0.0099 cent credit, and then how much we should have recovered, the ECA applicable sales in kilowatt hours, and then our actual cost. So we, in this case, if we had collected at 0.419 cents, we would have collected $15.29 million, but our actual costs were only $15.1 million, or our ECA for the month of July was about 0.0005 cents less than the board approved 0.0419 cents. So in this month, we have an over collection of the ECA. So we would go put this on each month. Now, some of these numbers will change. It's very common for costs to change for 2 or 3 or 4 years after the fact, particularly anything that we do that any purchases through the Cal ISO, they will continue to revise as congestion costs and the market clearing price continually gets revised. So this will always change by very small amounts as we move back and forth. But anyone who wants to can now get this, go through it, and see how we're calculating the ECA and whether or not there's a over collection or under collection of the ECA costs. And we'll keep it updated on the website, and as soon as the board says this is what they want, we'll put it on, and if we do it today, it should be up either by Thursday or Monday.
So the amount that's over collected is in the box?
That is what we should have collected if we had taken the 0.0419 and multiplied it by the total number of sales. Here, we would have collected 15.2. We actually collected 15.088. So we over collected $201,000 this month in the ECA. So that would then be rolled into our ECA going forward, and we will keep a cumulative cost moving forward where we stand month to month versus the 0419 value.
Excuse me. I just want to let you know you're flipping it, so the 15.2 is what we collected. The 15.
I'm sorry. Sandra is saying that I'm wrong. The 15.2 is what we collected. The 15.088 is what we should have. You're correct, sir. So we over collected the 201,000.
And the board will recall that monthly total would go into the balance of the year and the year-end true-up.
Yeah. Okay.
That's very, very impressive.
So it's there. Everybody can see what each of our resources are, how much we're paying for each of the resources, and they can track them on a month-to-month basis.
And you get this in the IID website under what's the heading?
We haven't put it there yet.
When you will, what would be the ECA or what?
ECA calculation. So it will be updated about the middle of each month. We still get bills coming in through the 10th or 11th or 12th that true up, which is why, for example, you get that large balancing sheet sometime towards the middle of the month. But it's why it does. We don't get information. We get preliminary numbers in what's called a checkout on the first day of each month. That's where each company calls up the other company and says, we sold you 1 million kilowatt hours at $10 a kilowatt or whatever, everybody checks out, but then the written bills comes through between the 10th and the 12th, and then we have till the 21st to pay. As the bills come through, we'll update them. We'll put preliminary numbers on here after the 12th, and then update it. And to the extent the numbers change, we'll go back and change it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. We will now move on to item number 12, page 33 in your agenda. Amendment number 4 to Major Work Authorization P6574. Mr. Ivy?
Joel Ivy, Energy Department, IID from El Centro, California. Madam President, Directors, stop me if you've heard this one. We've been talking about this project again since 2006. I was before you about a month ago for an amendment so that we can continue development of the IV Dixieland project. We should be concluding the BLM portion of the development phase by mid-October. We're still looking to purchase some real estate, get some right-of-way secured. So that should be still occurring over the next couple of months. So what I'm here today for is I'm looking to present a final amendment to this process for $26 million, which would bring the total for the project up to $32 million. As I stated, this project began in 2006, and once the development activities are complete, we are looking for funding to construct a 7-mile 230 kV transmission line that will be a new intertie with the San Diego Gas and Electric Imperial Valley substation, and then it will run to the existing Dixieland substation, and we're expanding that station and adding a new 230 kV bus in there for that termination point. This project will give us full redundancy for the existing S-line. So for a loss of the S-line, we expect to have the full 240 megawatts, equivalent to what we have now on the S-line for backup purposes. The benefits of installing this project, as you can see in the NWA proposal, shows a positive NPV of $5.2 million. We should have, by installation of these facilities, we get the residual benefit. Not only do we get the reliability cure that we're looking for the S-line, but we should have the opportunity to export up to 240 megawatts additional generation out.
This finishing up this project will correct all the reliability issues with the S-line?
The S-line itself is, we have a project coming forward to replace 13 poles on the S-line to correct some known deficiencies with poles that we have. The remainder of the S-line project will be built as development comes along. So to the extent we have outages like high winds or something like that on the S-line, we have this project intact probably by May 1st to be able to take care of that outage situation and still have full redundancy.
Aren't there other issues with the S-line, though, in the city of El Centro with the electrical facilities there that impact the S-line currently rather than what the potential future is of the interconnection?
Are you speaking about the switching station?
Yes.
At the steam plant? We have some opportunities with San Diego in the way that they're managing their generation. So it can introduce inadvertent flows on the lines coming into El Centro, certainly. We currently import roughly, let's say, 140 megawatts for our own needs. We can actually see up to 100 megawatts of inadvertent flow coming in on the S-line. So the rating is 239 megawatts, and it's set up that way to be able to manage it up to 239 megawatts coming in toward us. If we start getting into equipment rating issues, Dan McCann and his people at the SOC can contact San Diego, or we have the right to start dropping off the generators that are in Mexico to account for what the issue is. So far it's been manageable. Now, the beauty is I had George Barrientos run some studies trying to take a look at what the impacts are now and what they will be at some point in time in the future because of the inadvertent flow issue that we do have. we're introducing Hudson Ranch generating facility. We have the Sun Peak facility coming online. The El Centro Unit 3 at 140 or so megawatts is coming online. So when we start modeling all this generation that's resident in our system that is above and beyond what we've had in the past, it tends to push the inadvertent flow issue back out. It really makes a big difference. Having this added capacity also gives us the opportunity to export some of that. So for example, the Greenlight project coming on also contributes to the reduction in the inadvertent flow issues.
You've modeled that to get those figures, get that understanding. Several years back, the inadvertent flows was a big issue. I think I never could get the staff to admit it, but I think that was what was blowing some of our fuses. It was such a heavy load coming in.
Well, you know, we can't hide from the fact that we do have inadvertent flows. The fact is we have ratings on our lines and equipment, and as long as we're not exceeding that, we're okay. We have the opportunity to work with the Cal ISO to be able to mitigate that. When we start getting approaching the 239 megawatt limits that we've got set for the S line, for example.
Well, maybe you can help me understand this.
Okay.
And I'm going to explain it in ways that I understand it. Okay. If we have inadvertent flows coming now on the existing line, and we're building out to 230, aren't we just building more capacity for additional inadvertent overruns?
Additional.
And with the development that's going on in Mexico and maybe on up the line, is there any of that impact on our system that is a responsibility of Cal ISO?
There is the potential of that, yes. With the added generation that they're trying to get plugged into Imperial Valley Substation, that opportunity to further induce more inadvertent flow, of course, is there. What we have to work on, and we are working on, we're doing what we call affected system studies. So projects that are not interconnecting with us, we will study them anyway when they're close by for that very reason, to see what the issues may be. So we...
Is that impact study in the works?
We've conducted about 3 for separate generating units.
Specifically for IV sub?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. So logically, you would think the addition of Imperial Valley to Dixieland would induce almost the same amount of inadvertent flow opportunity, but it doesn't appear to be linear. According to the studies that we've run, it's quite a bit more incremental. The opportunity is there. But again, we are introducing more generations, so we have a tendency to push it out.
Electrons flow like water, right, to the least resistant.
Mm-hmm.
So our flow is coming this direction, and whenever we balance it out, we have to push it out up at La Quinta. Is that pretty much the way it works?
It when we're seeing the inadvertent flow issues, it's my understanding it races out the northern end pretty quick. So yeah.
So well, it's in our system, that distance, we have energy losses, which we have to generate then to make up for. Okay, so if there's power coming in from Mexico, cheap power, that's inadvertently flowing into us, and there's system losses, and then we have to run our generators at a much higher rate to replace it. You know, that was always one of my concerns, and I never could get to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if with the build out of Unit 3, I think that would help us push energy back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But likewise, if they load up on that line outside of Imperial County, then we're right back in the same game. But I would think if the generators are built here, and we can push the flow up that direction, then it's to our advantage. But depending on how many generators are built here and the circumstance, I'd question whether we're building a line for San Diego's benefit or for IID?
Fortunately, as I understand, the generators in Mexico, they're not necessarily firm. So when the system operators start seeing the inadvertent flows coming on our system, they're supposed to get on the horn, start talking to the California ISO. And it's my understanding that they have been doing that, and that process has been working to curtail that and stop those flow issues. The Imperial Valley to Dixieland project is a 230 line that's going straight into an existing 300 MVA transformer that's 230 to 92. So that presents another bottleneck. That's why I'm saying the amount of inadvertent that we might see on the system is not going to be a linear configuration. It's going to be significantly less, quite a bit incremental. But it certainly is a race to see who can install the most amount of generation, but that's resident no matter what we're doing. And so what we've got to continue to do is study these projects as they come along and make the determination that the ones that are coming from the ISO in their base cases, to the extent they're introducing these problems within our system, we've got to start piling the cost onto these guys for making improvements and curing it.
Well, from the extent of the impacts from Cal ISO, from the cost of the impacts of those build out and so forth, are they not responsible for that to protect our system?
Yes, they are.
Are we pursuing that?
Well, like I said, at the moment, as I understand the Mexican generation that's actually seems to be the cause of most of it today, they are non-firm. So if they are introducing inadvertent flows in the system, they're supposed to curtail. And again, that seems to be working.
And those are American companies in Mexico that are generating and shipping.
Yes, but still, non-firm is non-firm.
There's some concern that if we build this out, that we're paying for impacts from the Southwest Power Link, and we'll be assisting the connection of more Mexican power onto the Southwest Power Link, or even assisting the connection for Light Source or the Centro Energy solar projects that are going to be built in the Mount Signal area. Could we perhaps be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here and doing this build out when these other generators, or Cal ISO, in fact, or even Mexico, the American generators in Mexico, should be paying for these impacts to the IID network and backyard and balancing authority?
You know, if we were closing in the 230 loop from south to north, this might be a different conversation. The fact that we're building a substation that's converting down to 92 kV, it presents kind of a stopper. So it's not as big of a problem as what some people might think. And again, added generation is going to be our friend. Some more capacitor banks around the system to bolster the voltage. It's going to be our friend. And I think we can mitigate that with the arrangements we have with the Mexican generation, with the opportunity that we have to study projects that are coming online. And the ISO process has been working pretty well so far, I'll say. They are giving us these people as they're coming along to run the studies, and we're doing the same with them for people in our systems. And so we have the opportunity to have them pay for system upgrades to the extent there are any that we need to pile on them.
Well, there's no doubt it will improve our reliability.
Definitely.
That's given. On page, I think I'm looking at this right. On page 33, you have the import capabilities limited to 239 megawatts. Then on page 37, I believe it's 165 you have there.
The line, the operational limit that we have on the S line is 239 megawatts. Our own internal import capabilities that we have rights to over SWIPL and across the transformer is 165.
Okay. So that 165 is the SWIPL in that, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the stopper you spoke of is the 92 kilovolt transformer that's already sitting out there at Dixie?
Yes, sir.
Will there be any time of the year, like wintertime or something, where possibly we push more energy the other direction?
Where we do? Light winter represents, with the generators coming online, light winter typically represents the high flow for us because our load is way down and it's got to go somewhere. So yeah, that's the best scenario that we have. That's where we're really stressing the system and seeing where any shortcomings may be or problems that we have to fix are.
Mr. Koch knows I'm always looking at system losses, huh?
Yes, sir. But the other thing that you bring up there, that 165 to 239 megawatts, they are addressing that with Bank 82. That stranded capacity that we have there, the unidirectional capacity into the system, if we can get Bank 82, that's going to help solve that issue there.
That's a polite way of him telling me to hurry up and finish the cost-benefit analysis for that.
Well, we just make sure everyone pays their fair share.
This is a reliability upgrade. In other words, the district is going to pay everything. Now, we are doing, Mr. Ivy is doing the affected system studies, but this is an IID project, and none of the costs associated with this are going into the cluster. And that has to do with the way in which we have identified certain lines. The first circuit of the S-line upgrade, the Ivy Dixieland upgrade, has been identified as necessary for IID to meet its reliability requirements.
But you also have it as a component of the transmission build out. So it
Yes,
is
sir.
part of
the second circuit. Okay? So this is necessary as part of the cluster study, but the first circuit that we're building now, and then which Mr. Ivy is requesting the approval for, that is going to be an IID cost. Should another entity, which we fully expect and have identified in the cluster study, come through, then we will have to build a second circuit, and that will be at the cost of the generators.
Well, I think what Director Desert referred to, if some of the projects come in where they bypass us and they hook up directly, and if our build out is to accommodate that, then because of the inadvertent flows and so forth, then they need to pay part of that.
They do, and we've just did a inadvertent flow for that. We're started an inadvertent flow for the wind project out there at Ocotillo. We did one out east someplace, but we do see, as a generator comes through and gets into the Cal ISO queue, then the ISO notifies us and we can charge that generator for the cost of doing these studies. So we enter into an affected system study paid for by the generator, and any impacts on our system then have to be paid for by the generator as though they were interconnecting with us, the same way that we'd call us a network upgrade. I'm going to turn that over to Joel to finish that thought there.
We, in the studies that we've conducted so far, what we're seeing is that we can resolve these issues with special protection schemes, RAS, AKA, all that stuff. So when the problems start to occur on the system, we can curtail the generator remotely and automatically. That's the kind of issues we're running into now. The California ISO is starting to produce their cluster studies for affected systems, and that's getting to be more of an issue for us. So we're really going to have to be mindful as we're doing these affected system studies that we're probably going to have to be assigning some significant system upgrades to these guys.
Well, I know when we did the prudence review, part of the review was to look at the build out of the lines. Mm-hmm. And it was mentioned then, and it's beyond my technical skills, but it was brought up that a phase shifter could protect our system, and a phase shifter, and
phase shifting transformer.
Mr. Clark's opinion that shared that with us, believe that was a Cal ISO expense.
I would tend to agree with that. If we get to the point where we think we need to install a phase shifting transformer, then that would probably be because the system's affected to the extent you have to.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, I would say you don't want to do it until you have to, because it's one of those things that lives on in infamy. And we had one in New Mexico because we had some inadvertent flow issues with El Paso Electric, and we worked it out by installing a phase shifting transformer. And 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, we wanted to be able to bring more power south to north, and we were restricted by the phase shifting transformer. So it's a double-edged sword. You got to really be mindful of.
But when we brought it before, staff said, well, it was megawatt in and megawatt out. If it was that simple, it'd be all right.
Mm.
But megawatt in, if it's coming in as cheap power and we're having to run our generation, it could be as high as twice as expensive for us to replace it by the time it moves through the distance that we're talking about. That was my concern, was the distance and the location that we have to balance it back into the CalISO system. We were taking a pretty good hit on it.
Our system is, we're a pretty small system in the grand scheme of things. And we're going to be interconnecting a couple of big systems once we do the ultimate build out south to north with the 230 kV system. So yeah, it's going to change the game for us in how we manage our system, how we operate it. We're going to be very mindful of all these kinds of issues. Definitely.
The solar gen the solar gen project, which are called what's the new name of it?
That is it.
Green Light Solar Gen project. Now, this is a $25 million cost we're talking about building out at Ivy Sub. Is there adequate capacity for us to get the power out from the Solar Gen project to Ivy Sub?
This particular project should increase our export capabilities by up to 240 megawatts.
Yeah, but currently, is there enough? Is there enough the way it is?
We got
get 150 out there.
We got people that are sitting in the transmission queue requesting service, so it depends on where they fall in that queue point.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know. I'm not necessarily willing to talk about this in public. It may be an issue that we do in a workshop style format, but I'll tell you that we have 239 resident already that we're not using for export, and we're adding another 240. So that takes care of quite a bit.
Yeah, I'll just go back to that. Those Mount Signal solar projects that are going forward, most likely they won't be paying wheeling fees to the IID. They'll be connecting direct. I just don't think that we need to be paving the way to make that connection to the Ivy Sub. They're not paying wheeling. They need to pay the infrastructure costs, and we don't need to jump out there too early and be on the hook for that.
We should be the transmission provider of choice, definitely.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. This is information. Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, page 49. Amendment number 1 to service agreement with Irby Construction Company. Mr. Escalera.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As you recall, over a year ago, the Energy Department went out for a service agreement for construction services, which was awarded to Irby Construction for a period of 3 years, with an average of $6 million per year for a total of $18 million for the 3-year service agreement. As everybody's aware, with the storms that we had this past month in the Calexico area, actually the 2 storm events, we actually had to use all of our Irby resources in addition to our resources in putting our system back together. We actually had basically all of the personnel that Irby had available, plus all of their equipment, working in conjunction with our forces. And I do have to say that the coordination was excellent with both their forces and ours. In so doing, in looking at the costs to date that have rolled in, we estimate that the cost for Irby helping us out on that event is going to be somewhere between the $800 to $1 million of the between the $2.5 to $3 million cost that we've estimated for the storm event. what we'd like to do is ask the board to increase our service agreement as by $1 million for a total of $19 million for the 3 years, as the service agreements is not designed to take that kind of hit. It's designed to help us with day-to-day operations. Having Irby assist us 24/7 for those 3 weeks has really thrown our budget estimate for the service agreement way off. If we don't have some type of adjustment, we're basically going to have to start having them go home by next month. So what we'd like to do is have the board approve a $1 million increase to cover the costs that we incurred in them assisting us in the storm event.
Any questions for Mr. Escalera from the board on this matter? All right, Mario, bring it back for action next week.
Do you know how much of that expense will be reimbursed?
In the conversations that we've had with emergency services, they couldn't tell us. It's still sitting at the governor's office trying to get a firm fix on how much will be reimbursed. Our anticipation is that it's going to be in the neighborhood of about between 85 to 95%, Director Hanks.
Yeah. Personally, I think whatever we're being reimbursed, we need to go ahead and amend. But beyond that, it's part of their contract. I mean,
hopefully we're going to be
may run short, and then at that time come back and tell us what we're paying for.
Well, the anticipation is that we're going to, if we are reimbursed, say at 80-85% of the cost, it's 85% of the $2.85 million that we think the project will cost. This only represents the costs that we had to pay to Irby. Cost to date, we've incurred about $1.5 million on our own of our crews and our time. What it's trying to do is the mechanics of the service agreement, Director Hanks, is we want to make sure that we stay true to the policy that our service agreement doesn't run out of funds. As you will recall, when the service agreement was brought up, the service agreement is for day-to-day operations and helping us in construction events. We've kind of used them outside what we would typically use them. And if we don't increase our service agreement, we're going to have to basically send them home and tell them not to come back till January.
What I'm saying is, whenever you run short, then bring it forward. You're extending it past what was agreed to.
The way we manage...
Agreed them an amount of money. Okay? Now, if because of the cost of this emergency, you run short towards the end of the year, then you need to bring it back to us. But I think before that...
I think I understand what you're telling me, Director Hanks, but we are short. If we don't do something now, we're going to run out what we budget for, the $6 million a year. We will run out at the end of August, and I've been directed by the board and my managers that don't run out of money in service agreements, then come to us. And so it's us being a little proactive that we're very close to running out of what we allocate for the 1 year. Now, if you're telling me that I can go ahead and utilize the $18 million and come back to you in 2012 and address this cost now, we can do that too.
What I was talking about, if let's say that their share, Irby's share of this emergency was $1.4 million, and we get reimbursed 1.2, then that should be added on to their service agreement.
Yes.
Okay, but the 0.2, okay, would ride until you ran out. Then if you need the 0.2, then you come back to us.
Yeah, but what he's saying is because of the storm, we already burned the money up that he had allocated, and so therefore he needs more money to get him to the end of the year because you've already used the money up because of the storm, right?
And we are very serious that we will not exceed any dollars on a service agreement. If we have $6 million and we run out of the money on September 1st, we will be done with Irby for September, October, November, December. But I'm not willing to allow Mr. Escalera to exceed the $6 million for 2011.
The $6 million that we have, the original $18 million, it's broken up in 3 years, 6 million, 6 million, 6 million. And we basically schedule out the $6 million, which is basically 4 crews and their equipment for a year. Because everything was so condensed, they were working 4 crews, 12-hour days and at night, and they brought in additional equipment. It burned up a lot more than we would have typically burned up. So we need to get room within the service agreement, and that's what we're asking for. And we're so close to the end of the year that, and I'm not sure when the state will reimburse us. In my estimation, it'll probably be toward the end of the year, better part of first of next year when we first get reimbursed. So all I'm trying to do is find room within my service agreement so that I don't violate the direction from my manager and then again policy.
And if you had not had a storm, you would not be here asking us for the money.
I would not be here for that.
Right.
I know because I visited the Irby crew and our guys when they're working out by Boca Road after the storm, and yeah, they were working day and night, and they had their crews, we had our crews, and the emergency services management of what do you call that? Their trailer? They call it. What is this?
Emergency mobile office.
No, their mobile. What do you call their trailer?
Winnebago.
No, but they have a name for the trailer.
It's command.
The command post. That's what I was talking about.
trailer.
The command post, whatever. Yeah, they were out there, and so I saw these guys working because I visited them, and they did a lot of work, and it was hot, and so I think I understand where you're coming from, and so I think it's a reasonable explanation. So bring it back for the next meeting. Is that?
So then any shortfall, we just take it off for their amount for next year then?
Well, what would happen is that when we get to the end of the third year, Director Hanks, is that we should end up with some room. If there was if we ask for more than what the actual cost was, is that we'll end up with the total amount of the 19 million not being used up at the end of the 3-year period.
Okay, bring it back. Any other questions, Director Hanks?
I guess.
I understand what you're saying.
I don't think so.
Yes, I do. I know what you're saying.
We can certainly give you the breakdown if you'd like how we manage the service agreement. Maybe that would help, Director.
Well,
Hanks.
let me ask you this: what are you running? What work are you going to need Irby to do in the future that you're short on money now?
What the typical work that we would do? I know they help us out with our regular work.
Not typical. Okay, we have a certain amount of money budgeted.
Yes.
Okay, and part of it we get reimbursed. I don't have a problem with that moving forward. But we're producing, taking additional funds in a budget. You're moving forward that you can't even tell me what the funds are going to be used for.
I will be honest with you. I think you've lost me, Director Hanks.
Dr. Polk, did you
I'll
want
explain it to you.
Okay.
Because I had a board explain to me real close one time.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Dr. Koch, did you want to say something?
I don't want to interrupt Director Hanks.
No, it's all right. I'll sit down there.
We do schedule these, Irby. We schedule their crews as though they were part of ours. First we use our crews for everything, and then Irby picks up the additional amount. They are scheduled on a on a daily basis, just as though we were using them, as though they were our people. But if we don't need them, they're the ones that get sent home first. So they are doing work on our system day in, day out. When we had the emergency, we use them. We don't have the internal resources to do everything that Mr. Escalera is saying. But you said if we get reimbursed $1.2 million, we're not asking for anything more than $1 million. Mr. Escalera will budget to the $7 million for 2011. which will include whatever we spent, the $1.5 million that we spent during the storms. If we run out of that, we run out of that. We are not going to go above $7 million for 2011, regardless of how much of it we get reimbursed from the state. But in general, the normal work that they do, we don't get reimbursed.
Where's that money going to come from?
It will come from the Energy Department budget.
So you're going to come back and tell us where you're going to transfer it from? That means we shut down another project to accommodate this?
Well, one of the things is that we have to, the actual amendment would not be for shutting down additional project. The amendment would have come for paying for the work that was done in the storm. And I think that's probably correct, is that somewhere down the line, we have to come in.
Taking it out of reserves is what you're saying.
Well, that would be up to the board and the general manager, but the request would have come for the storm, which was an unscheduled cost. And we've discussed that with our controller, and our capital budget has room to be able to take on the work that we've scheduled for them. It really is a matter of the normal burn rate per se of IRB is about $200,000. The number isn't right. It's not 200,000. We burned about almost $1 million. In other words, almost 800,000 over within that very short period of time that would have been our normal scheduled expense. And if I read the question correctly, Director Hanks, the question is, where's that money going to come from? Yeah. And we'll present that to the board.
What you guys are telling me is that IRB's contract is going to come ahead of one of our projects. We're going to take funds from one of our projects to cover this.
Well, I'm not sure that's what I'm saying, Director, because you have to remember, IRB does our projects. And so does work that we would do in our own projects. All we're trying to do is have enough room within the service agreement to use IRB for our projects that we have still scheduled for the rest of the year. That's what we're asking for, is room in the service agreement.
I would have preferred that you came and said, you know what, we have this project, we're out of money, this is the project we're going to do, we need to transfer money for that project. But you're putting the money out there and saying, now we're going to find a project to plug in there. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure. Okay.
Director Sanchez?
I think Director Hanks threw me for a loop in the last comment, but I thought what he was trying to say was, is there a project that is not needed this year before we take, I'm guessing, before we take money from cash reserves? I know, from my opinion, my thought process has always been the cash reserves there for natural disasters such as the wind, fire, and stuff like that. When you have to, that way, we don't have to stop our natural workload. But I'm okay with bringing back all the projects and seeing where we can maybe cut a project or two this year and find some money there if the board chooses not to use cash reserve. But I think this is one project where you would use cash reserve because of a natural disaster.
Mr. Escalera, if the board directed you not to include another $1 million in the IRB budget and you ran out of funds by the end of August, how would that affect the reliability and the maintenance and whatever of the electrical system?
Well, it certainly would impact our scheduled work. I mean, IRB is 4 crews. We have a total of 10 crews on our own. So we would, in essence, be cutting our O&M, our construction and maintenance resources by that percentage. And then we would basically just tell them that there would be money. There's no money left this year for their service agreement to come back in January, and then we would start all over again. It really, again, it's room in the service agreement. I understand the concept of coming back and how we're going to pay for the event that we had. But right now, because of the fact that it had such an impact on our service agreement, and I don't want to go over my service agreement, we want to be able to get this room in the service agreement. And then once all the costs roll in, is come back and say that this is what the storm events cost, and it's up to the financial people to to determine if we take it out of resources or we're directed to cut projects.
Mr. Escalante, you're damn if you do, you're damn if you don't. Either way.
Well, what are you going to do with the unreimbursed work that our staff did? How are you going to cover that now? You make an exception for Irby, but you're not going to do it for your own staff.
Which one is that? What staff are you talking
Same
about?
emergency work. We're going to cut the expenditures,
We had overtime and emergency.
the unreimbursed amount that our staff perform. We have to take that out of another project or take it out of reserves.
For our troubleshooters that are working side by side with
Yes,
with
and
Irby.
that's what I'm saying. It should be the same way. Now, when it comes time, if there's additional work that has to be done, and we're out of money, then you increase it at that time. I don't have a problem with increasing the reimbursed rate. Whatever we're reimbursed, I don't have a problem with the extending amendment. But that shortfall, I have a problem with.
Would you, Director Hanks, would you object to a budget transfer based on the expectation that we will be reimbursed?
But what are you going to spend it on?
Well, the wind event is I mean, it's already done. We've already done that work.
Yeah, I understand that part. But what you guys are missing is the fact we're not being reimbursed 100%. Okay? We have a budget to live in. With the work that IID staff perform, and if it's reimbursed at 95%, the 5% that was not reimbursed, we have to cover that. It was not budgeted. Okay? So we either cut a project or we pull out of reserves. Okay? We're not doing that for our contractor. We're giving them the 95% reimbursed. The other 5%, we're going to add on to their contract.
I think I
But
understand.
you can't tell me what work they're going to do for it.
Well, and I think because, if I may, Director Hanks, I truly understand what you're saying, and I understand. Really, all we're trying to do is, because we have a policy that is very strict, and we've been very, is that do not spend more than what is a service agreement is amount. Now, the fact that we're asking for $1 million increase to the service agreement, we're not asking for authorization of $1 million more. If I don't get this in front now, by the time we get everything, all of the costs totaled, and we find out what the state is going to reimburse us, that's 3 or 4 down months the road. Then I'm going to have to make a decision and tell them.
I don't have a problem with that.
Really, that's all I'm asking.
You're reimbursed more than $1 million. If you're not reimbursed more than $1 million, then I'd have a problem with it.
All we're asking is to keep the service agreement within the policy. If a month from now, we're not going to spend $1 million.
Don't worry about the policy. You better worry about living within the budget that was adopted by this board, and that's all I'm trying to do. We're trying to live within the budget that we approve.
And I think that's what we're trying to do. I mean, it's...
Well, whenever
Thunder's behind you.
That's fine, but whenever you get ready to do that, tell me where the money's coming from, so I'll know.
Thunder.
And that's a good question, Director Hakes. And I just want to make a clarification that regardless of what we do with the service agreement, we've spent the dollars on the labor and Irby that those costs were incurred during the storm. So what I'm being told is that approximately 80% of the work was capital work, about 20% of the work will be O&M. In the capital budget, I believe through June, we've maybe spent, rough estimate, maybe about 35% of the capital that we've budgeted for this year. So the projection is we will not be expending all of the capital, and we've got funds to transfer for the cover the capital portion. But the O&M portion, there is no room in the budget. So I just want to make the board aware that that 20% will result in a budget variance. And so we would look to the board to give us direction. If they want us to do a budget transfer, we could do a transfer from capital to cover that. And that is a question. But I just want to clarify, excuse me, that there's the issue of the expenses that we've already incurred and the service agreement. And I'm not opining one way or other on what you do with the service agreement. But I do just want to make it clear that the expenditures that we did incur due to the storm are currently going to be a driving factor in a budget overruns on the O&M budget.
Director Sanchez?
So the difference is 200,000. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director Hanks. I think what he's saying is two things. One is if we're going to get reimbursed by the state, if Irby's going to get reimbursed by the state,
No.
or whoever's going to get reimbursed, why is that work going to Irby instead of because basically it's money that ratepayers are not having to pay, but. Is that where you're going?
No, no, I don't have a problem with them doing the work. I don't have a problem being reimbursed at the rate we are. But the budget is going to be short. We're not going to be reimbursed 100%. Okay? So that should come out of their service agreement. Now, when you get down to the end, there's some project has to be cut. When you get down in, if that project has to be fulfilled, then come to us and ask for the transfer. But to me, you're putting money out there, and there's no project for it.
Yeah, but the storm created the problem.
Yeah. No. Never mind.
Okay. Bring it back next week, and then we can vote on it. Thank you.
I'll sit down and explain it to you.
Yeah, okay. I think we're actually, to some extent, going to the same place.
I think I understand the difference, what you're talking about with, we were given $500 million. We are not going to spend more than $500 million, period. If we get reimbursed, but the key is not the allocation, if I'm understanding you. It is, we are going to live within a $500 million budget, period.
If we get reimbursed on this work, whatever we're reimbursed, we'll extend that on past it. And the shortfall has to come out of the budget.
And the costs that we incurred have now gone against this 500, and I'm pulling the 500 million out, that's just a round number. And you are saying that we are not going to exceed that, and it's up to the district, up to us, to show how we're going to move funds around such that we do not exceed that 500 million. And that includes the additional costs that our people incurred, which may or may not be reimbursed, that Irby did. You don't care so long as we do. I'm not saying you don't care. I mean, your point is, so long as we don't exceed the 500 million, move funds around, tell us what we're going to do, not do, but don't exceed that 500 million.
If it comes to a situation where they're going to have to lay off people, and some of the equipment's going to leave, it's going to have an impact on us, then bring it back and let us know that. But it seems to me that we're putting premature, we're taking money for some project. May exist, it doesn't exist. No one can tell me what it is. But if it's just to keep his staff employed to the end of the year, then say so.
I think we can address that question for you next week.
Bring it back next week, and we'll talk about it some more. Thank you, Mr. Escalera. Moving on to item number 14, page 52 on your agenda. Amendment number 1 to service agreement for power engineering.
Correct.
Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Dan McCann, Assistant Manager, System and Trading Operations. This is a amendment to service agreement for power engineers to do relay design. We currently have a service agreement with them and 2 other entities. When we have a project, we bid it out to the 3 and see who gives us the best price. Power Engineers has been consistently lower than the other 2, so we've used up just about all their money. We're planning on using them for the approved MWA for the 230 line relay replacement, and we want to continue bidding it out. We expect that they'll continue to be the lowest, and so that's why we're asking for an increase. If for some reason one of the other entities turns out to be lower, then we'll come back and ask to transfer money between the three entities.
Okay, questions or comments?
Yeah, on the relays, Dan, are you getting a pretty good handle on that now?
Yes, we are.
Bring it back next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 15, page 55 on your agenda, Water Department General Matters. Mr. Villalon, are you still awake?
Yeah, just barely.
Barely.
I just have one item, just an update on the water projection. Last week we were at about 45,000 acre feet over our tentatively approved order. Currently we're a little over 50,000 acre feet
Over?
On a 2.85 million acre foot tentatively approved order. Just to give you a perspective on our overage, this represents about a little under 2% of our approved order, 50,000 of 2.8 million. Coachella Valley Water District is at under 48,000 acre feet on an approved order of 381,000 acre feet, about 12%. Met is projected to be over 124,000 on an order of 735,000, little under 20%, 18-19%. So we're right on the edge within measurement accuracy. Their advantage is that they have other sources, they have storage, they have supplemental water. We don't. We're lucky to be within 2%. So we'll have to work at supplemental project, which we are doing.
Okay.
Mr. Villalon, that projected overage follows 2 consecutive years in which we had almost a 500,000 acre feet under, as the board knows. And the IID's own projection continues to be that we'll have another year where we're under. But to be safe, we're going to come to the board in September, well in advance of that deadline of October for an SDI declaration, and I think we're going to explain to the board differences in the way that this projection is being calculated compared to the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? We'll move on then.
I got a question. Kevin, did they have any idea of what our projection of underrun would be? Are we going to be 25 under, 50 under, 100 under, just roughly?
I would be really hesitant to field a guess. I do not believe that. I know that Mr. Villalon has consistently predicted being over, and I think probably the board would agree that would not be, the worst outcome following 2 successive years of being under. But we are going to try to refine that number for the board in September.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 16, page 56 on your agenda, electric system refunding revenue bonds. Mr. Broking?
Yes, we've provided the board with the final documents of the third financing for the El Centro Unit 3 repowering projects. We've highlighted the changes in red. Most of, or many of them, have to do with dates, interest rates, and bond amounts. So we're asking that you accept the documents as provided
So this
to
is
the
an
board.
action item. Can I have a motion to
I'll
approve?
move to approve.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Thank you. Mr. Kelly, any further business?
I got 2.
Oh, consent, that's right. Oh,
Yes, and Mr.
thank
Broking, could you remain for those, please?
Is this guy here with Irby?
We're going to do item number 2A, which is page 9 on your agenda, as requested by Director Desert. Director?
Yeah, in review of the documentation here, it seems that the IID employees are being impacted negatively by some mistakes on the W-2s. The response from staff is a recommendation that they go online and file for free, or they simply amend their tax records in the future. I believe at this time, at this pay grade, all the staff members at the IID probably are having a professional sign their tax returns. And I think that we should take it under consideration to, in fact, pay these claims. This claim here of $150 for the mistakes made on the W-2s to the IID employee.
One is 150 and one is 160.
That's correct. The first one is $150 and the second one is $160. If
That's
you'd
your
like
motion?
to take care of both of them at the same time, they both involve the same issue. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
What was the motion?
To pay these claims.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion, please vote. Thank you, Mr. Brooke.
What was the vote?
We have to vote.
Okay, sorry about that.
Wake up.
I'm awake.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, further business?
No,
None?
Madam President.
Meeting adjourned.